All right. Welcome back. And we're here with another episode of Body, Mind, Spirit. And I'm very excited to have with us today, Jen Stevens. Thank you so much, Jen, for taking the time to be with us.
I love to spread the word about intermittent fasting and how it changed my life and how it can change lives of others as well.
Yeah, that's the thing that's so exciting. You are like a best-selling author, like a couple times over, and have had some amazing books about intermittent fasting. How did you get involved with this?
Well, if we go back decades, I was a serial dieter, like I'm sure a lot of your listeners are. And, I can remember growing up with a mother who was always trying to lose weight. She was a dance teacher. And so, she had to keep her body, a certain way. And, I remember the first time I went on a diet, and that was right after I got back from my freshman year of college. And then there was the yo-yo, right? Eventually over the decades, the yo-yos got higher and higher and higher, if you know what I mean, until eventually, by the time 2014 came around, I was 210 pounds. I was obese. And, I had literally tried anything that came out prior to, 2014. I had probably done it. And my weight just kept going up and up over time. And, I was really looking for, how can I lose this weight? It can't be that hard. Why am I fighting my body? What's wrong with all these diets that I've tried? Why have none of them worked? Why do I lose the weight and then gain it back? And all of that searching led me to intermittent fasting. And so I went on to lose 80 pounds. I've left it off since 2014, 2015, when I lost the weight. I've maintained within the same weight range, wearing the same clothes ever since then. And, I'm a 53-year-old woman. I've been through menopause and maintained my weight and never had to buy bigger clothes ever again. So, I was just a person looking for the answer. I was an elementary teacher. I have a doctorate in gifted education, so I knew how to research, and all roads led me to intermittent fasting. Thank goodness.
Boy, that is amazing. You look awesome. You look awesome too. I thought you were easily like 10 or plus years younger than
right?
that.
Thank you, fasting.
So, which actually, I mean, there's a lot of anti-aging benefits to the intermittent fasting too. But let's just go over like, what is intermittent fasting? Because I think, sometimes people have this like perception about it, and because I know I've had people ask me like, well, what's the difference between that and just yo-yo dieting, meaning like you
Right.
eat, don't eat, and binge and purge? They're like, what's the difference,
Well, they're super different. And a lot of it has to do with what's going on behind the scenes. Well, all of it has to do with what's going on behind the scenes. And, to understand that, I mean, you're a doctor, you understand the role of insulin in our bodies, but most people just think of insulin through the lens of diabetes, right? Everybody knows somebody who's type 1 diabetic or who has developed type 2 diabetes. And we just think of insulin as something, we don't have to think about that or worry about that unless you're diabetic. But actually, insulin is at the root of so many of our health issues these days, including the obesity epidemic. Have you read Dr. Benjamin Bickman's book, Why We Get Sick yet, Betsy?
No, but I
Oh my
like
gosh, you got to
something I'm
read
going
it.
to add to my list.
You got that. That is a book I would have everybody read. Why We Get Sick, Dr. Benjamin Bickman. And he is an expert on insulin resistance and what having constant high levels of insulin will do in our bodies. So if we think about the dietary advice that we've gotten for the past few decades, eat 6 times a day to rev up your metabolic rate. If you want to lose weight, you need to restrict to 1,200 calories a day. And it's all math, right? We've been told it's just math, and treat it like an equation. Calories in, calories out, you will lose weight. Except that we've all tried that, and you can lose weight eating low calories like that for a period of time, but eventually your body starts to fight back. And we really understood that when they did the Biggest Loser study, probably was it 2016, something around in there. And they found that the people who had been on The Biggest Loser and lost the most weight, their metabolic rates were damaged to the point that they had to eat 500 calories less per day to maintain their lowered body weight than would be predicted based on body weight alone. So the low calorie diet didn't do well for them in the long run. But let's go back to insulin. We've been eating, dietary advice to eat 6 small meals a day, lower your calories. Well, when you're snacking and eating and drinking diet sodas and having a latte, even if it's, calorie free, your body is releasing insulin in response to all these snacks and meals and diet sodas. And so insulin is just up and up and up. And what we know about insulin is that it's what we call anti-lipolytic, which means it prevents fat burning. So if you have really elevated levels of insulin going on all the time, you're not tapping into your fat stores very well. So like, let's say you're just drinking diet soda all day long and taking in 0 calories. There's something called the cephalic phase insulin response, where your brain senses something sweet's coming in. That's calories. It's going to be sweet. It's going to be sugar. It's going to raise our blood sugar. We're going to need some insulin to deal with that. Your pancreas pumps out some insulin. Only, you're really not taking in calories. It's diet soda, but your body doesn't know that. More insulin, more insulin. So the higher your insulin levels, the less likely you are to tap into your fat stores for fuel. You're starving, you're hangry, you're not burning fat very well. So that's the typical dietary advice we've been following. Insulin stays high. Well, fasting is completely different, because when we're fasting, and the key is to fast clean, which I can talk about in a minute, but when you're fasting clean, your levels of insulin actually come down. There's somebody in my community actually that shared today. She had her fasting insulin test done and her A1C 3 months ago. Her fasted insulin level 3 months ago was 44. That is not good. And she had it redone. She got her results, I think, yesterday. Her new fasted insulin level is 3.
Wow.
Through intermittent fasting. She's been doing some alternate daily fasting, which is a fasting approach that is very well researched. But her fasted insulin levels came down from 44 to 3, thanks to the clean fast. And she's been losing weight. She's feeling good. And the key is that you've got to get your insulin levels down somehow. And the traditional way of low calorie dieting is not doing that for us. And when we're fasting clean, we open our eating window, we feed our bodies well during our period of time when we're eating. We nourish our bodies well. We are not over restricting. We fast, we feast, we repeat. That's the name of my New York Times bestseller, Fast, Feast, Repeat. But we are not counting calories or overly restricting. We're learning to eat till we're satisfied. We stop when we've had enough and we feel so good. But the key is, because we are fasting clean during the fast, our bodies can suddenly see all of that fat that's stored there, and we can access it. And so the experience is completely different than when you're having those little tiny meals spread out through the day. You're not hangry. You don't have the brain fog. It's just a completely different metabolic situation going on in your body. We become metabolically flexible, which is how our bodies are designed to be. So we can switch fuel sources as needed. So that was a long answer. Did I answer all the parts of it?
Oh my goodness. No, that was absolutely perfect. And it was a better explanation than I think I've ever heard, because, especially when it comes to the diet sodas, because we've always heard like, okay, diet sodas actually sabotage your weight loss. Yeah. And I have been for years going, well, why is that? Why is that? And
reasons,
I just kind of went, all right, whatever, and just accepted it. But that was a great explanation. Mm-hmm. And, I am looking forward to hearing a lot more about this when we come back from the commercial break.
80% of women will develop a pelvic health condition at some point in their lives. There is relief. There is hope. The Pelvic Floor Store, your resource for personal health.
And we're back with Jen Stevens talking about intermittent fasting. So Jen, you alluded to it before about clean fasting. What does that mean?
Well, the clean fast is really the thing that makes all the difference. Anyone who's ever tried intermittent fasting before and it didn't work for you, whenever I talk to people and they're like, I tried it, didn't work, usually people were not fasting clean. So we have to think about, there are really 3 fasting goals that I talk about in my book, Fast, Feast, Repeat. And the first is keep insulin low. We just talked about that. So in order to keep insulin low so you can tap into your fat source for fuel, you avoid anything that your body is going to think is food or sweetness coming in. Avoid diet sodas. Don't put lemon in your water. Avoid flavored coffees. Avoid herbal teas that taste, like a dessert, like, anything that's a sweet, even chamomile has a sweetness to it. So you want to avoid tasting anything that makes your brain think food's coming in. And of course, don't eat real food either. But that would mean sticking to plain water, plain unflavored sparkling water, black coffee, black tea, plain. Don't add anything to it. And we just really want to keep, the bitter flavor profile of the black coffee and the plain tea. Bitterness does not stimulate an insulin response. So that's important to know. So the second fasting goal we have is we want to tap into our stored fat for fuel. And so you don't want to take in any other sources of energy during the fast. And that would include putting butter or MCT oil in your coffee or any kind of cream or anything like that. That's often one of the hardest things for people to wrap their minds around. Because they're like, well, I saw a YouTube video that said it was perfectly fine to have 50 calories of cream. That did not break the fast. Well, dairy is nature's perfect food for building a baby mammal at the period of the time it's growing the fastest. Does that sound like fasting? No, it does not. You can find lots of, YouTube videos to tell you anything you want to hear. But I promise you, if you were putting a little bit of something in your coffee and struggling, that was why. We want to tap into our stored fat for fuel, not the fat from our coffee cup. And the third fasting goal is we would like to have increased autophagy. You mentioned earlier about the anti-aging benefits, and we know that as we age, autophagy, which is our body's cellular housekeeping, that goes down. We have decreased autophagy with aging. We want to have increased autophagy, and fasting stimulates that. So what would stop autophagy? Well, eating, but also protein. So if you're sipping on bone broth thinking, well, it's low calorie, I'm doing a bone broth fast. Well, you're doing a low calorie diet with bone broth is what you're doing. And you are interrupting the increased autophagy. So you don't want to take in any protein during the fast. So keep your insulin low, tap into your stored fat for fuel, have increased autophagy by sticking to plain water, plain sparkling water, black coffee, black tea, nothing added, no flavor enhancers. Don't chew gum, don't take mints. I know it sounds hard, but it's really so easy once you learn how to do it.
And then during the time that you're eating eating like a normal
Yeah,
calories, but you're just eating it during a different window.
Right. You put all of your food into whatever your eating window is. And in Fast Feast Repeat, I have something called the 28-day fast start that will walk you through, that adaptation period. The first part of it is the hardest. When you start, your body is not fat adapted. You have to build up those mechanisms behind the scenes. And as your body flips that metabolic switch, though, it actually is so much easier than that low calorie diet you did before. There's a quote that I love, and I didn't create this quote. I'm not really sure who did, but diets are easy in contemplation, but hard in execution, right? We're like, oh, it's going to be great. I'm going to do it. It's going to be easy. It seems like it's going to be easy. And then it's so hard. Well, fasting is the opposite of that. Fasting is hard in contemplation, but easy in execution. We think it's going to be so hard. It sounds so restrictive. But what I hear over and over and over again from thousands of people is that once their body is adapted and they become intermittent fasters as a lifestyle, they find so much freedom versus having to constantly restrict, count, guilt, all of the stuff, guilt around the food. I don't have that anymore. Yeah, I don't have any guilt. If it's the holidays and I'm having, whatever the delicious holiday food, I have zero guilt. This is my 9th holiday season as an intermittent faster. And, my black velvet pants that I bought 5 years ago still fit me. So thank you, intermittent fasting, for that.
And when it comes to I've heard of a couple of different ways. Like you do the window during the day, or some people do it where they I guess every other day. Or so what are the different types of intermittent fasting with windows?
Well, the time restricted eating, which is the daily eating window approach, there is no one way to structure that. And even for me, my days can vary from day to day, depending on what I'm doing, how busy I am. But in Fast Feast Repeat, I will guide you to finding the intermittent fasting approach that feels best for you. We have a saying in our community, and we say, tweak it till it's easy. And I absolutely mean that. You know how when you do a diet and it gets harder and harder and harder the longer you do it? Well, with fasting, our goal is to tweak it till it's easy. And when someone is struggling and not feeling good, you haven't found your easy yet. And we tweak it till it's easy by changing up the time of day, the number of meals, how long the window is. whether you start with a snack and then have a meal later, or open with a meal and have a snack and another, whatever. It's going to be completely, dependent on you. And, we all have a different circadian rhythm. So, all the people out there's a little faction of people in the intermittent fasting world who are proposing that here's the time of day when it's best for everyone to no, that doesn't exist. I've talked to enough people over the years, literally thousands of them in my online support communities, that I have enough confidence to say that people do not all have the same best eating window. And it's just a matter of finding out what feels good to you. And again, alternate daily fasting is another approach. It's really well researched. And we have what we call down days, which are your fasting days. And then the next day after that is what we call an up day. And it's a metabolic boost day, but it's like an unrestricted eating. So it really is like, don't fast, fast, don't fast, fast. And the up day where you're having an unrestricted day, you're just eating, normally. In the research, those people ate on average about 125% of their daily caloric needs. They were slightly overeating on up days. And we know that overeating boosts metabolic rate. And so they lost the fat on their fasting days, the down days. So it's a great approach. I would not start there. That is not what you want to do on day one. You need to build up that fasting muscle first. But all of this is in Fast, Feast, Repeat. And it is very comprehensive and will help someone find their own, tweak it till it's easy.
And I'm sure it's not like you can't like game the system, because I remember years ago doing Weight Watchers and counting my points, and no joke, I would eat vegetables all day, which were free points. And then I would binge on chocolate cake.
Right. Well, you were not fueled well during the day. That's that low calorie again. If you're low calorie dieting and you're eating, you're not tapping into that fat very well, and you are underfueled. And our bodies are amazing. If we are underfueling, they have these hunger signals they will send us. And the Minnesota starvation experiment that was done in the late 40s, it was right after World War II, I believe, they studied, starvation and what happens when we over restrict, and binge eating is a full on, that's what happens, right? So it's normal. And with intermittent fasting, we have that goes away. Once your body's fat adapted, your window opens, you suddenly find a reconnection with satiety signals you didn't even know you had.
Yes.
And we call that appetite correction. And you're like, oh, I've had enough. I don't need to binge or overeat. That goes away with time.
Oh, this has been so informative. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us. Where can people find out more about you?
Well, the best place to connect with me is at jenstevens.com. Jen is Gin, Stevens is with a PH. From there, you can find links to my podcasts. The Intermittent Fasting Stories podcast is the one I'd recommend for people to start with, because each week, actually twice a week, I have 2 episodes a week where I interview somebody who is a real life intermittent faster, just like me, just like anyone else. And they tell their story, and we can learn so much from hearing how other people have applied this to their lives. I also have a community. You can get to that through jenstevens.com/community. It's right there. You can find my books. It's all linked right there.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much once again. And so I just want to remind everybody, make sure you go check all Jen Stevens stuff out, because you're definitely going to find some value there. And if you're not somebody who needs it, somebody who needs it.
Oh yeah.
We all know somebody who needs this. So definitely take a look into that. While you're there, don't forget to go to wytv7.org. Look at all of the other wonderful programming we have. While you're there, don't forget to hit the donate button, because every dollar that you donate not only helps with bringing amazing programs like this, but also supports our community events and outreach and scholarship funds. Don't forget to find me on social media, Dr. Betsy Greeleaf, in one way or the other, and come back next week for another episode of Body, Mind, Spirit. Thank you so much, Jen.
Thanks, Betsy.